as a separate piece, and you can use the animal compassion piece, but eating is so complex, eating is so intense that alone can be a battle. And that alone is a battle for many people. Sometimes it's enough to understand that eating better and eliminating these things from your nutritional intake practices can make the difference in your physical, mental, spiritual health and well-being. And then you add on to that, maybe when you see a video or you see an animal being slaughtered, and you start to make the connection. Right now, there's a major disconnect in that respect. But for some people, a very small, seemingly a very small percentage of folks, that's enough for them to make the shift. But for most folks, it's really dealing with these addictions that we deal with. And these addictions are based on sugar and salt, but they're also based on nostalgia. They're also based on habits. I have a habit of going to this place when I leave this function. You know, wherever that place is, whatever that function is, there's a routine that we're in. And sometimes our eating is dictated by those habits and those routines. I had someone come to me several years ago. I was doing a food vending event in Greenville, North Carolina, and he saw all these people at our table, and he was very excited to see us. He read the name Vegan Flavor Cafe. He read the name and was very excited. It's like, yeah, I'm a vegan too, except when I go to my mother's for Thanksgiving, which I call Thanksgiving, because my mother, I got to eat her chitlins. So I'm a vegan until I go to my mother's house and eat her chitlins.
And you bring up a couple of things that have got me thinking really loud and clear and everything. One of those is you mentioned that there's a stigma about being a vegan and everything. What do you feel that stigma is, and how, as you grew into this lifestyle, have you processed that stigma, and how have you dealt with that stigma?
The stigma, the major ones, we don't get the nutrients we need, specifically the protein. Being vegan is equivalent to eating salads exclusively or primarily. Those are the two major ones. A lot of folks will come at you. Say again?
No, go ahead. You said a lot of folks will come at you as...
A lot of folks will come at you with those things like you're doing a disservice to yourself by being a vegan. Now, let me also say those folks may not be wrong, because being a vegan can mean a lot of things pointing you in the direction of eating. I stay away from the word healthy. So I'm looking to avoid healthy even for the sake of this conversation. Because healthy also has a stigma attached to it, and at the same time, healthy doesn't necessarily mean anything the way it used to. People who look at vegans feel like, number one, they eat healthy, which can be great, but it can also be a turnoff, because if you're not a vegan, then oftentimes you recognize that you don't eat healthy. Now, there are many vegans that eat an unhealthy vegan diet. And what that means is they eat a lot of processed foods, they eat a lot of soy, they consume a lot of foods that are not necessarily the whole food, plant-based, nutrient-dense foods that they need to consume. And then you have people who still consume meat, but who eat better than some of the vegans. So that's one of the reasons why whenever I talk to folks about how they eat, I love to talk about eating better as opposed to being whole foods plant-based or being vegan.
Now, you bring up an interesting point. You actually brought it up earlier, and I find that I'm even guilty of that, is that a lot of times you're so busy in whatever your careers are, you're so busy ripping and running, going to this meeting, going to that meeting, going to wherever, that you find yourself a lot of times going to fast food establishments. Now, some of these fast food establishments may try to advertise themselves as being healthy. Now, whether they are or not, that's a matter of debate. Like I know that, Subway, I'll even go out there and say their name, is one that tries to advertise themselves as trying to be a little bit more healthier than, say, a KFC or a McDonald's. But if you're out ripping and running, oftentimes I think that you find a lot of people that might want to eat better, whatever they're eating, that they find themselves automatically heading toward those kind of establishments. So what kind of words of encouragement do you give people to get them away from feeling that they have to automatically do the whole fast food kind of lifestyle that has become so prominent in our society these days?
So thank you for that question, because that leads me to the workshop that I do, which is part of the services that I offer. I do a free workshop, and it's called Being Better by Eating Better. And the premise is eating better is very intense and complex. And it's a reflection, oftentimes, of areas where we need to grow from a personal level. So I lay out 5 things that you need to enhance or increase or improve upon, and then conversely, 5 things that you need to move past or press down or overcome. So quickly, the 5 things that you need to improve upon. Number 1 is honesty with self, which when we get to the book, that'll come up again. Honesty with self is essential. Awareness of what you're doing, as opposed to being in habit mode, being aware and intentional of what you're doing. Being respectful of the process of eating better. There is a process to it. A lot of folks, they watch What the Health, or they watch Eating You Alive, or they watch Cowspiracy, they watch Plant Pure Nation, they watch Forks Over Knives, and then they want to say, you know what, I'm going vegan immediately. There's a process you need to go through to really make this change effective. So you have to respect that process. There is incentive. What is your incentive? Is your incentive health related? Is your incentive for the environment? But define that and utilize that to your advantage to support you in your hour of weakness. And I actually put information and incentives together because they both have the letter I. Information is those documentaries and all the information that you get from that. Information is your own research on how you're going to replace some of the nutrients that you're getting from said food. And then patience. And actually, I like to use patience and discipline together as 2 essential universal laws. So patience and discipline. So those are my groups of 5 things that you want to increase or enhance to support you in eating better. On the other side, the things that you need to get rid of or push away from you: convenience and its cousin, laziness. Those 2 go hand in hand, but they can stand on their own as an hindrance to you eating better. Fear. And fear sometimes throws people off. Well, what do you mean fear? There are people who are afraid to taste our food, even when they see all these people around them eating it and enjoying it, because they know, and they won't admit this, but they know that if they eat this and they like this, then they have less of a reason to change how they eat. They have less of an excuse to change how they eat. But we don't want, we want to eat better, but we really don't want to give up what we're eating. I've mentioned nostalgia. Nostalgia is essential because just like the brother who said, yeah, I'm fine being a vegan, but when I go home, I got to have the chitlins. That's real. A lot of folks won't eat certain things because of nostalgic memories. But most eat what they eat because they get around family, they get around friends. They're used to eating when they're in a certain environment or mind state. And again, another incentive for writing the book, pseudo self-worth is the fifth thing that you need to let go of. And pseudo self-worth is, I need to feel good about myself by getting energy from other people. I can't feed myself energetically. Or even if I do feed myself energetically, I need to get this energy from somebody else. So the example I used to call it peer pressure. But if you've ever been in a situation where you've made a decision that you're going to eat better, or you're going to stop smoking, or you're going to drink water instead of soda, or you're going to stop drinking, or tonight you're not going to drink because you don't have a designated driver. You've decided to stop doing that. And there's always at least one person that attempts to talk you out of that. And they don't necessarily have any advantage or any benefit seemingly, but it just makes you feel good when you can talk somebody else out of or into doing something that they didn't want to or wanted to do. So it's a way to prop yourself up and make you feel good, even though it doesn't have any impact on your life. That's pseudo self-worth. That used to be peer pressure. And those are things that everybody I talk to who has attempted to eat better, they all go through that with family and friends. The people who are closest to them, they all go through that. So those are the things that you need to eat better. And so that's a lot when you think about it.
It's interesting that you bring that up, the whole pseudo self-worth and how we're oftentimes dictated by other things that are around our society. Because I remember this past week on last Thursday, I was actually, I always do, in addition to this show, a blues show at one of our local community radio stations. And afterwards there's a talk show. And usually I'm heading back to talk about that quick ripping here and ripping there. I'm ripping back to Durham. But in this particular time, the person who comes after me does a talk show, and they asked me basically the engineer for the talk show because the other person who was going to be the guest was going to take the role of being the host. So I was cool with that, and I did the engineering. But the guest that they had was a young lady who had written a book called a film called Straws. And it got me to also thinking about your animal rights activists. We're going to have one of them on the show in about 2 weeks, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks. But a lot of times when I'm talking to these documentaries, people, a lot of times this information is put out there, and people hear this information, and to be perfectly honest, it scares the wits out of them. You watch a documentary about what goes on with animals and the way that animals are tortured and the way that animals are processed, and you're sitting there going like, it scares you, and you want to live the right lifestyle. And you don't want to have any animal products when you see those videos and you see the way, or these documentaries, and you see the way that animals are treated. And the same with this documentary that this young lady is doing. It's out now. It's called Straws, and it's basically talking about plastic straws and how we're destroying our environment with these plastic straws because it goes into the nature, and our animal friends don't know what that is, so they mistaken it for animals that they eat or animals that they prey on as part of their own cycle of survival and everything. So then they wind up eating that, and when they do these, what amounts to an autopsy on these animals, they find all these crazy things in there, plastic bottles, straws, and other things that they have confused with what is going to be a product of theirs in terms of what they're hunting and everything. So they find all this crap in them and everything. But so you think about what it's doing to our society in terms of destroying, maybe a whale or a turtle or whatever that's out there. And the same with these documentaries that talk about the way we treat our animals when they go through, whether it's a pig, whether it's a cow, when they're being fattened and putting all this chemicals in it and everything, and the way that all this has happened. So I've seen some of these documentaries, and like I said, first time you see them, you're sitting there going like, I'm not going to have a burger ever in my life again. I'm not going to have any of this stuff again because what they doing to these animals ain't cool. But then reality sets in, and like you said, you get back to the peer pressure. You start hanging out with your friends. You start hanging out at the restaurant, and, all of a sudden you're at the restaurant, and you done totally let all of that stuff go out the back door. So you wind up ordering a burger or some turkey or chicken or whatever it is that's